Special focus on Nigeria. A critical general election in Africa's most populous country has now been postponed. Nigerians will have to wait a little longer before they decide to either give President Buhari another term or to usher in new leadership in the largest economy on the continent. While CGTN's Richard Nta is part of the dedicated team that is covering latest developments in Nigeria. Richard, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lindy, and to our viewers across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining CGTN's continued coverage of Nigeria's elections. Well, we all woke up to the news that the much anticipated, much awaited elections have been postponed. The Independent National Electoral Commission's chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, attributed the move to logistical challenges. Back to you, Lindy.
Thanks so much, Richard, and all those details coming up in just a short while. Here's what else is coming up on the program. 2 survivors rescued from an underground mine in Zimbabwe. And Chinese President Xi Jinping meets U.S. trade negotiators. Nigeria's presidential and parliamentary elections have been delayed by a week. The Independent National Electoral Commission made the announcement just 5 hours before the polls were due to open this Saturday. Now, the chairman of the elections body, Mahmoud Yakubu, has cited logistical issues behind the postponement, adding the delay will ensure a free and fair vote. The presidential and parliamentary polls have now been scheduled to Saturday, 23rd February, while governorship, state assembly and federal area council elections are now slated for Saturday, 9th March. This is not the first time the polls have been postponed in the country. Presidential elections in 2011 and 2015 were also delayed over logistics and security issues.
Following a careful review of the implementation of its logistics and operational plan and the determination to conduct free, fair and credible elections, the Commission came to the conclusion that proceeding with the election as scheduled is no longer feasible. Consequently, the Commission has decided to reschedule the presidential and National Assembly elections to Saturday, 23rd February 2019.
Well, let's now cross over to Abuja, where our team is covering the latest developments in Nigeria for us. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Lindy. Well, the Independent National Electoral Commission is set to meet with stakeholders in the Abuja International Conference Center later this afternoon to deliberate on new developments. Now, the Commission, in arriving at the decision to reschedule the vote, said it was necessary for successful delivery of the elections and the consolidation of the country's democracy. It is not yet clear who exactly will participate in the talks besides the political parties. Top political leaders have traveled to cast their ballot in their hometown and might not make it in time for crucial talks.
Following a careful review of National Assembly elections Saturday, 23rd.
Well, the decision to reschedule the vote has elicited mixed reactions from Nigerians across the country. In fact, some have called for the resignation of the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Now, others wondered what it is that INEC had done over the past 4 years to ensure a smooth vote that the electoral body now hopes to achieve in just 1 week. Now, let's listen in to some of them.
Very, very disappointed with the leadership of INEC. The system, they have made people to incur a lot of bills. Most of my friends that travel out of Abuja, I call them one after the other. Most of them are in the hotels, waiting to cast their vote today in their various local government. But they were all disappointed.
On the ordinary, I lost the interest. But for the love of my country, I'll be here next Saturday and make sure I vote.
That's incompetency on their own part. Because it has they're giving them money, everything that needs to be on ground, logistics wise. should be taken care of. So you don't come up now and tell us that it's because of logistics. What have you been doing since 3 months ago?
I was very disappointed. In fact, I have to travel a long distance, which cost me money, leaving my work behind, and so many other things. In fact, I don't have a family I have to travel with to get to this place in order to vote, and getting here, they are telling me the election, just to find out this morning that it has been postponed. That is to show that Nigeria is not in a good condition. Because if they are organized, they would have done this like 2 days before the election or a day before the election, so that everybody should know how to get back to where they are going and how to get back to their respective job.
Like some of us have children that they have given midterm break from school, and expenditures that are going to be put on ground to make sure that these children, go back to school on Monday. Now they have postponed the election. That is to say that the school will still give midterm break next week again. Then following, some of us have traveled to a close-by place where we are going to vote. We left our work in a far distance and come down to this place to come and vote. And coming down here, passing the night since yesterday, I've been here to make sure that I vote this morning. I just had the news early this morning that the election will be postponed.
Making it known exactly how they feel. We now have our resident political analyst in studio, Mr. Martin Obono. He is a lawyer and a representative of the TAP initiative. Martin, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. First and foremost, we were certain Nigeria was going to have a vote today. What exactly happened, in your opinion?
Just as the world is so surprised to see this kind of turnout of events at 2 a.m., that's how everyone else is so surprised to see this, because the INEC chairman, Professor Yakub, promised everyone that elections were not going to be postponed, that elections were not going to be staggered. But yesterday evening, we started hearing feelings from the INEC Commission that elections will be either staggered or postponed. So most people were quite surprised, because you had 4 years to actually prepare for these elections, and then just in the early hours of the day, when people were supposed to go prepare to cast their votes in the day, elections were called off. It is actually very pathetic. It is it smacks of so much incompetence on the part of INEC.
Okay, Martin. Well, this has happened not once, not twice, but 3 times, from 2011 to 2015, and now again in 2019. Would you say this is a feature of developing countries or perhaps African countries? What's your take on that?
I think it's a feature of Nigeria, more or less.
A feature of
Nigeria, because in 2011, voters were already out queuing, trying to get accredited and all that, and then people realized I was on the field that period trying to monitor elections, and then it was noticed that materials were not in INEC offices in most of the parts of the country. And so in 2015, it was an issue of insecurity, although we had close to a month notice before the postponement was announced. So people prepared, both political parties, candidates, and even the electorates also had prior preparation towards that. But in this particular situation, we got so much reassurance on the part of INEC. There were speculations actually that the elections was going to be postponed, but the assurance we had from the INEC commissioner was that the elections won't be postponed. But it is actually very pathetic, and I hope that we work on this and improve in 2023.
Okay, Martin Obono, here's the question that everyone wants answered, and that is, what does INEC intend to achieve in a week that it wasn't able to deliver in 4 years?
I feel election logistics is not rocket science, especially in a country like Nigeria. To distribute election materials is not rocket science. You can lift materials overnight and send them to the various locations, as long as you are prepared to do this. So the issue is, if INEC is ready to do that, they can actually achieve that in the next 1 week, and we'll have materials delivered across the country. So it is not an issue of whether it had to take 4 years. No, it's something that if INEC was really, really competent in handling, they will have handled over the week.
Okay, how does this reflect on the credibility of INEC?
As we speak, a lot of people are angry, and they're saying INEC is not ready, INEC is incompetent, INEC has been compromised, depending on the divide that you belong to. Actually, the accusations are coming from both sides, from the PDP, from the APC spokesperson. We've seen them accusing the INEC chairman of compromise from the PDP, and the PDP presidential candidate has actually said something very, very important. I mean, something that, as much as saying it is the voice of Esau and the hand of Jacob that we are saying, that means it's the presidency controlling this. So it's affecting the credibility of INEC itself in general. People, and I just hope that the electorates who are very, very upset right now will not translate their anger into the bullets, but to the ballots, and go out and vote on the 23rd.
So what do you think of INEC's decision possibly being challenged by the court?
It is actually within the ambit of the law, because based on the Electoral Act, there's a stipulated period for handover of election. Elections must be conducted within a particular period of time before you hand over in May 29. So this is within the ambit of the law that election can be staggered and can be rather postponed, and so nothing of such is going to happen within the case will be thrown out. Whoever takes such case to the courts.
Okay, so now does it mean now that the political parties can continue campaigning? What's the word on that?
It is the INEC that has the right to do that. What we are basically concerned is the issue of PVC collection, the permanent voters card collection. So now there are a lot of people who couldn't pick up their permanent voters card. Is INEC going to allow extension of time for them to pick up their PVCs? Also, will they allow political parties to campaign again between now and Thursday or Wednesday next week? So these are all issues that hopefully the INEC chairman will address at the 2 p.m. Press conference that is scheduled to hold at the ICC today.
So what psychological impact do you think this has on Nigerians at large, and could this possibly affect next week's turnout? The impact is actually not just psychological, but it's also economical. The psychological impact will definitely also weigh down on people who intended to probably carry out some level of political violence or the other. It's going to stretch them. So it might douse down some level of violence tension. In terms of the economy, a lot of people have invested in these elections. Candidates have invested so much. Political parties have invested in paying their polling agents to man all the polling units across the country. Also, people have traveled. People have rented. In my office yesterday, somebody rented an office close to where he votes in this Abuja because he realized there will be no movement. So how is he going to spend more money next weekend to pay for a hotel to be able to vote? So I think it's going to affect the turnout of the elections. However, those who have resolved to vote will still go out and vote. Okay, Martin Obono, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight and analysis. We will be speaking to you again really, really soon. Moving on, as many as 66 people were killed by armed men in Kajuru local government area in the Kaduna state in northwest Nigeria on the eve of the now postponed general elections.
As many as 22 children and 12 women were among the victims of the attacks. Governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, who confirmed the killings, described it as a deliberate attempt to destabilize the region ahead of the general elections. We understand that several arrests have been made. Meanwhile, here in Jos, many voters unaware of the postponement came out as early as 6 a.m. to cast their ballots to find out that the election is not taking place as planned.
I don't know that the council election. I came out of my house with my PVC to go and vote. All of a sudden, I now heard that the council election, which I don't know. I will be in my polling unit from now to 11.
People traveled from here to different places, different states to go and cast their votes. And just of a sudden, they woke up to tell us that the election has been postponed. It's sad.
And it's a great setback to our economy. Imagine the whole day have been cancelled, no transaction, nothing.
Officials insist the postponement is necessary to ensure a free and fair vote. Samson Omale, CGTN, Jos, Nigeria.
All right, we now cross to our correspondent, Deji Badmus, who is in Lagos. He's ready to give us the latest on the ground. Deji, thank you for joining us. What's the latest on the ground? Can you give us insights on what's happening in your area?
Well, Richard, what I can tell you is happening in Lagos is exactly what is happening across the country. As you can see right behind me, this normally is a very busy street, but you can see the street is deserted. all of Lagos streets are still deserted. A lot of people still do not know that the election has been postponed. And for some who actually know, they've just decided to continue to remain indoor. I think activities will pick up later in the day. That's when we expect the streets to come back alive. But for now, everywhere is calm. The streets remain deserted. And, you know, and I must tell you that people are really disappointed. I've actually spoken to some people across the city. They're disappointed. They never expected this to happen. But unfortunately, it's happened. And so they've just got to put up with it. But to be candid, people are really disappointed that this has happened because this has scuttled all of their plans. People had made plans for next week. I mean, we had some of the sound bites from other parts of the country. You heard about, you know, schools giving public holidays now to students and all of that. So people are really, really disappointed about this. Seriously disappointed. And the good thing is that the president has actually issued a statement. He's also expressed his disappointment with INEC, but then he said he believes in the independence of INEC and that people should just be patient and calm.
All right. Deji, thank you for letting us know about how disappointed Nigerians are. But let's talk about the presidential candidates. Numerous resources have been spent on their campaign. How do you think they are adjusting to the latest news?
Well, I mean, both candidates, the leading candidates have issued statements. Atiku Abubakar has, of course, issued a statement condemning INEC for postponing the election and, of course, accusing the opposition, All Progressives Congress now of orchestrating the postponement. And, of course, we've seen President Buhari, of course, issue his own statement expressing serious disappointment with INEC and saying that this was not something he saw coming at all, that INEC had given every assurance that he was prepared for the election and that everything was provided for INEC to ensure that this election was free, fair, and, of course, transparent. Now, look, Richard, something is setting. The political parties are going to spend more money as a result of this postponement. Because what you're going to have is that, you know, before now they had stopped campaign. So it means they have to resume their campaign because they now have a whole week of campaigning to do. And campaigning involves a lot of money. We may not see rallies as we saw in the past, but of course, you know, we would definitely see door-to-door campaigns. So some level of campaigning would be done between now and Thursday next week, which would be the new deadline now for the stoppage of campaign. So it's a lot of money. I mean, there's a cost to this for everyone. A cost for the political party, a cost, of course, for the citizens, election observers, including we journalists, as you're aware, there's also a cost to us as well.
Deji Badmus, thank you for that update and report. We shall be following the latest developments and staying in touch with you. Moving on, though, in other news, Nigeria's suspended Chief Justice has finally appeared before the Code of Conduct Tribunal. He pleaded not guilty to 6 counts of corruption charges. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more on that story.
Embattles Chief Justice Walter Onnoghen making his way into the courtroom. It's the first time he's appearing in court after refusing to appear at 3 consecutive court sittings. He decided to turn up after the court issued a warrant for his arrest. He's accused of running numerous undeclared accounts contrary to the mandatory requirements for public servants. The accounts worth millions of dollars have now been frozen.
The Honorable Chief Justice of Nigeria appeared here before the tribunal voluntarily. And for us, we must begin by saying that today is indeed a very sad day for the judiciary, a very sad day for democracy, a very sad day for Nigeria.
Despite his appearance, Justice Onnoghen's lawyers insist he can't be tried by the Code of Conduct Court. They see his trial as a political witch hunt.
There is more behind this prosecution. Today, plea has been taken, arraignment has taken place, and the matter has been adjourned to 11th day of March 2019 for all the other motions we have challenging the jurisdiction of this tribunal and challenging the competence of the chairman to continue with this trial.
The arraignment of Justice Onogen is historic. He was granted a court bail on condition that he will personally appear at the court proceedings until the case is disposed of. He's also being investigated by the Judicial Council for corruption. He denies all charges, but if found guilty, he could be dismissed and sent to jail. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
All right, we are live in Abuja, and yes, Abuja is a ghost town. Unfortunately, we have our correspondent Phil Ihaza in Abuja to give us more insight on what is going on. Phil, thank you for joining us. Well, I'll begin by asking you, Phil, Richard. You particularly have been covering this elections and preparing for this elections for a very, very long time. What would you say is next for you and the media here in Abuja?
Oh, thank you, Richard. Well, it's been, like you said, a very long period of preparation, build up to the election, several months, ensuring that everything, was put in place by the media and, of course, in collaboration with the commission, INEC, that's the Independent National Electoral Commission. So it's been, in fact, the last week has been one of the longest weeks, ensuring that we got accreditation, we got proper information, in spite of speculations that INEC were not prepared, but we got all the information up until a few hours this morning to the election, where we got disappointing information that the elections are postponed yet again, because this is not the first time. It has happened in 2011, 2015, and now. So we're hoping that we're going to get clarifications, not just the fact that, yes, it was as a result of logistics and operational challenges. We want to get clarifications because Nigerians, have been to the streets of the state capital, Abuja, and a lot of people having mixed feelings. Some are angry, disappointed, frustrated. They're also wondering, will this also occur next week? What about the sensitive materials that have been distributed already to the local government areas? Are we going to see those materials in safe hands? What is the assurance that security operatives will guard those materials from now till the next Saturday, which is the election? So these are some of the questions. It's still a very busy week for us. Maybe the next week will even be longer, in quote, than the last week that we've just seen.
Okay, Phil, what can you tell us about the impending meeting between the INEC officials and stakeholders that's set for this afternoon?
Well, it's going to be a meeting between stakeholders, the commission head, and of course the media representatives in the country, especially in Abuja, the state capital. It will be held at the headquarters, the International Conference Center, ICC, in Abuja. One would expect some form of engagement between the media and the commission in detail to get more information on what exactly caused this decision, late-minute decision or late-hour decision. We got reports, of course, just yesterday that there were delayed, movement of materials were delayed to some states like Taraba, Edo State, Ekiti, and Benue, and a couple of other states, and that would have, of course, influenced the decision by the INEC. But we want to understand how this must have occurred in spite of all preparations and all the assurances given by the Commission. So I would expect question and answer segment between the Commission and media representatives. I will also expect some form of clarification from the Commission to ensure, like I said earlier, that these materials in those sensitive, local government areas, 774 local government areas, are in safe condition, and this will not repeat itself next week, Saturday.
Phil Ihaza reporting from Abuja. Thank you for that update and report. I guess, Lindy, that'll do it for Abuja for now. It's right back to you in studios in Nairobi.
Well, thank you so much to you, Richard, and our team on the ground there in Nigeria for that comprehensive coverage of this election. Now, indeed, those empty streets in both Abuja and Lagos pointing to just how unexpected today's postponement is. And it's hoped, of course, that millions of Nigerians will still head to the polls next week to decide who will be the country's next president in Africa's largest economy. Well, as CGTN's Robert Nagila reports, the focus now will be on one particular group of voters, the youth.
In the heart of Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos, 27-year-old Chidozie Nwale, a street vendor, is hoping his vote will bring about much-needed change.
I need government to help us for our business, to support our business.
It's a sentiment echoed across the city by its youthful population. For them, it all boils down to one thing.
Financial, in our way they want to help us, they can help us.
Like Chidozie, many of the street vendors here in Lagos are between the ages of 18 and 35, selling everything from clothes, food and accessories.
To give you an idea of just how significant the youth vote will be in this election, over 84 million people are registered as voters here in Nigeria. Of that number, about 51% is made up of the youth.
It's no wonder then that the two leading contenders for the top seat, incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari and former Vice President Abubakar Atiku, have targeted the youth in their campaign messages.
What I would like to see from the next Nigeria governorship or presidential, let them provide a job opportunity for those people that have went to school and there's nothing doing.
I want them to fulfill their promise they made during the election. If they can be to part of 100% of their promise, they can be to at least 30 or 40, you know they try.
Any person that wins, so that let the person be serious with us, so that it can do a good job for us. We need more job for Nigeria.
For many youth like Chidozie, a peaceful and credible electoral process is foremost on their minds. Then, fulfilling campaign pledges will take center stage. Bob Nakila, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, merchandising is proving to be a lucrative business in Nigeria's electioneering period. Politicians and interest groups are spending big money on memorabilia makers who work non-stop to produce items like hats, t-shirts and scarves that party supporters can wear to help woo voters. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has more.
Like many entrepreneurs in Nigeria at the moment, Joe Matso is seizing an opportunity that comes around every 4 years. 4 months, he and his competitor have been selling a range of goods that allow political party supporters to show their support for their chosen candidates.
Lots of printing jobs. The ones are coming from the Independent Electoral Commission, right there. The ones are coming from politicians, both at all levels. So every printing company in the country looks forward to the election period because you make more money. So it's quite exciting.
Nigerians have a choice of more than 70 candidates. Africa's most populous nation has over 84 million people registered to vote. Thousands of supporters have been keen to show their loyalty to their chosen candidates by dressing up in politically branded gear. For print merchants like Joel, business is booming.
So the pressure is much. In fact, most times we have to employ some ad hoc staff, far more than 50 ad hoc staff. So when the pressure is much, they'll bring them in, they work and they go. We want to use this period to build our capacity, to get additional equipment, expand. Trusting God that in the next 4 years we would have increased our capacity by 80%, both in terms of equipment, in terms of number of employees, and in terms of ourselves. By 2023 would have doubled whatever you are seeing here now. You notice that when you came here in 2015, not as big as this.
Nearly 23.1% of Nigerians are unemployed. The country returned to growth in 2017 after its first recession in a quarter of a century. Yet, recovery has been sluggish. The economy and job creation have been some of the issues in the center of campaigning.
Normal election is the sales will sell more than ordinarily maybe any program at all. But just say this time around, from different states they come to buy, and the work is higher now than normal time.
The print merchants say they hope to use the funds they make to increase their production capacity and grow their businesses. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
And that is where we leave our comprehensive coverage of Nigeria as we return to some other news after the break. Coming up, 2 survivors rescued from an underground mine in Zimbabwe while others are still trapped. The Ethiopian military showcases skill, equipment and technology in an annual parade.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are these stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
We start in Zimbabwe now, where some of the miners trapped underground in 2 mines since Tuesday are believed to be still alive. Some are being pulled out of the mine shafts. According to reports from the accident site, 2 survivors have been rescued. Varima Kutuya has more.
Rescuers had been working around the clock since Wednesday, trying to de-water mine shafts that had been flooded by water from a burst dam wall that had left dozens of miners trapped underground. Water levels had receded enough on Saturday morning for rescuers to go underground, where they found 2 survivors who claim that 6 other miners are still alive. At least 60 miners have been trapped at 2 gold mines at battlefields in the country's Mashonaland West province. The number could be higher, as some of the miners are thought to have entered the mine shafts secretly. Illegal mining is rampant in the mineral-rich area. Despite being a significant contributor to gold deliveries, small-scale mining remains largely unregulated and is fraught with safety and environmental issues. Varima Kutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, the news of the rescue has brought some hope to relatives who had expressed their frustration at the slow pace of rescue efforts. Here's more on that.
It was expected the trapped miners will start being brought out by Friday, but the flooded tunnels were too much for the rescuers. For the relatives and friends, hopes are slowly fading away as frustrations sink in.
We lost a lot of people, and what is so painful is that we see a lot of rescue workers, but it's been 3 days without success. They should give us a chance to go into the pit because we know the pit better than them.
I am in tears because most of the people trapped down there are of my age, between 21 and 23 years of age. So it is so painful that they are trapped.
The government has so far declared the Tuesday accident a disaster. Over 70 miners were trapped in battlefields after a nearby dam burst, flooding the shafts and causing the minefield to collapse. The accident happened in Zimbabwe's Kadoma town, situated in Mashonaland West province. Most of those trapped are illegal miners, popularly known as makorokoza or hustlers. They operate in abandoned minefields, some with shafts as deep as 100 meters. This accident highlights the safety concerns for those using basic mining skills and tools in their quest to strike gold. Dina Matengo, CGTN.
Ethiopian Defense Forces have celebrated Army Day in the country's eastern city of Admama. Military personnel performed drills and demonstrations to showcase their skill, technology and preparedness. Chiefs of staff from Djibouti, Kenya, South Sudan, Uganda and Rwanda joined thousands of Ethiopians for
and interceptor planes. At a later stage, the Ethiopian Special Operations Force took over. The warlike demonstration represented the skill of the army in attacking strategic targets and freeing hostages. The Commander-in-Chief of the Ethiopian Defense Forces, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, said Ethiopia's army has been delivering beyond the country, will continue doing so.
At times when our country faces low and high situations, our defense forces protected our sovereignty with perseverance and faithfulness, with determination and above all by putting the interest of the country and its people as a priority. The army has paid the ultimate sacrifice. The army has delivered beyond its borders and has provided its arm for any nation that needed its support. We shall strongly pursue this path even in the future.
Alongside close to 50,000 participants from Adama City, the 7th edition of the Ethiopian Defense Forces Day was attended by 7 neighboring states' army chiefs of staff, including from Djibouti, Sudan, Rwanda, and Kenya.
The Ethiopian Defense Forces believe that the peace of our neighbors is equal to our peace at home. That is why you have thousands of our troops across the region. Everywhere, the army always works with respective communities and has become the most trusted and chosen army.
The army too has expressed excitement over the celebrations of its day.
Today's event has excited me so much. The performance by all the 3 blocks was amazing. We shall continue safeguarding the constitutional order and the peace of the people.
Currently, the Ethiopian army is undertaking a major reform. This is said to have aimed at creating a professional army by enhancing and empowering its ground, air force and other sections. Through the reform, Ethiopia also is re-establishing its navy as well as newly commissioning a cyber and space wing of the defense forces. Group Dala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
In international news, President Donald Trump has declared a state of emergency in the United States. The move may allow him to bypass Congress to allocate funds for his long-promised wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. Trump has been working to get his wall built in a political fight that led to a 35-day partial government shutdown. CGTN's Jessica Stone has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's declaring a national emergency to speed up the building of his proposed wall at the border with Mexico. Congress gave him just under $1.4 billion. The White House says it plans to spend $8 billion.
I could do the wall over a longer period of time. I didn't need to do this, but I'd rather do it much faster.
Past presidents have also declared national emergencies, but mostly to respond to crises which emerged overseas, not to bypass a decision made by lawmakers. Opposition party Democrats say they'll use every tool available to oppose the president's declaration. They argue it is not only an unlawful overreach of power, but that its consequences pose risks of their own.
It leaves our troops vulnerable, and it does that by doing things like taking funds we've already allocated but not yet spent, but they haven't yet spent, from our intelligence centers, from our military readiness centers, from the schools on military bases across the world.
Prominent members of Trump's own Republican Party, like Senator Marco Rubio, warn the declaration violates the U.S. Constitution and sets a dangerous precedent. Others, though, are backing their president.
Well, he said it when he was candidate Trump, now he's President Trump, and he's putting the security of the American people ahead of partisan politics, and I fully respect that.
But on the campaign trail, Trump also said Mexico would pay for the wall.
We're going to build the wall, and we're going to stop it.
The $8 billion he's now targeting comes from U.S. taxpayers. Trump acknowledges there will be lawsuits to try and stop the declaration, but says he's ready for the fight.
Probably easiest one to win is on declaring a national emergency, because we're declaring it for virtual invasion purposes, drugs, traffickers, and gangs.
But Washington's own statistics contradict that argument. According to the Department of Homeland Security, illegal border crossings have actually declined over the past 2 decades. And when asked where he got his numbers, the U.S. president told a reporter here at the White House, quote, "I have many stats," end quote. Jessica Stone, CGTN, at the White House.
Meanwhile, in Beijing, Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with visiting senior American trade officials. Xi emphasized that cooperation is the best approach for the two countries and that confrontation will lead to a no-win scenario. He's also said China is ready to resolve their differences and frictions with the U.S. Victor Ning has the details.
President Xi met with U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Trade Secretary Steven Mnuchin in Beijing, saying that important progress for the current stage has been made in the latest trade talks. The president stressed cooperation is the only solution. Meanwhile, a Chinese analyst says the two parties need to keep in mind each other's fundamental needs.
Both sides have their own core interests, which they will guard. China's principles are that people's livelihoods can be affected, its system can't be damaged, and the nation's stability cannot be seriously overturned.
President Xi noted both sides will meet again next week in Washington, and he encouraged negotiators to make persistent efforts and try to reach mutually beneficial agreement.
I think they've touched upon many specifics. As far as publishing details, I think it will take some time for top leaders and governments to discuss and coordinate.
In December, Presidents Xi and Trump set the tone for the trade talks when they met during the G20 summit in Argentina. They agreed to a 90-day truce to prevent new tariffs during the negotiations. Beijing said it would further open up market access and expand imports. In their latest meeting with the Chinese leader, Lighthizer and Mnuchin reaffirmed the importance of U.S.-China relations, expressing hope that a deal will be reached in the upcoming negotiations. Victor Ning, CGTN.
Well, let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. China pledges to help restore ancient temples in Egypt.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Tanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's start in Egypt now, where the first archaeological mission from China is working at an excavation site in Luxor in the south of Egypt. A 5-year deal was signed between Egypt and China at the end of 2018 to develop and restore the ancient temple of Montu. Yasser Hakim has more.
There are about 250 missions from around the world currently working on excavation site in Egypt, and China is the latest to enter the field. Mustafa al-Waziri has been overseeing the Sino-Egyptian Archaeological Cooperation for the last year.
I was very happy that last year the Chinese culture attaché with the ambassador, the Chinese ambassadors in Egypt, they had a meeting with me and the minister, Dr. Khalid al-Anani, the minister of antiquities, and they were talking about the joint mission between China and Egypt. They said, we are planning to have a concession or a joint mission in Karnak. In the visit to Karnak, they start looking at the temple which is a bit to the north of Karnak. We call it the Temple of Montu.
A team of 7 Chinese and 3 Egyptian scientists have been working on Temple Montu, the eagle-headed god of war. Montu Temple was built in the 14th century BC. For decades, the site has been abandoned, covered with grass and weed, and closed down. The 5-year Chinese mission hopes it can restore the temple to its original form and open the site for tourists.
They had a very good plan. Number 1, to get rid of the wild grasses all over. Number 2, to make a sort of documentation in Montu Temple. And number 3, to have a site plan for the entire area. They left, and they are coming back in a couple of months to continue the work there. But anyhow, so far, they are doing such great work in Monto Temple.
The Egyptian official told me Cairo would approve any request for other Chinese archaeological missions to work in the country. Experts say the experience from such overseas projects will benefit Chinese scientists back home.
Meanwhile, 17 Chinese books will be used for teaching purposes in Egyptian universities. This follows the signing of a copyright agreement between the China Xinhua Wenxuan Publishing and Media Company and Egyptian authorities. The step is part of efforts aimed at strengthening cultural ties between the two nations. The books have been translated into Arabic. The head of the Egyptian National Library.
But Ida is alive, so to speak, if her movements are anything to go by. She is named after celebrated British mathematician Ada Lovelace. And her creators say
that is visually, as in she's going to actually be drawing. We're hoping to then build technology for her to paint, but also as a performance artist, she'll be able to engage with audiences and actually get messaging across, asking those questions about technology today.
The tiny cameras in the eyeballs enable the robot to recognize human faces, make eye contact, and even follow you around the room.
We already integrate good parts of AI that work well. So there's AI running in the computer vision that allows the robot to track faces, to recognize facial features, to mimic your expressions. We've used speech recognition in the past, again, another good use of AI.
The makers also say Ida will also be expressive, will be made of silicon, and she will have printed 3D teeth and gums. Jane Kill, CGTN.
Your sports news coming up next. Still ahead, South Africa's Pastor Semenya awaits a ruling on her appeal against new IAAF regulations.
Nyami was very strong, had very strong material powers, bigger functional powers than the smaller gods.
Basically, I don't believe in the Nyami. I just hear stories, the Nyami, it was just by the bank of the river of the Zambezi, but I've never seen the Nyami. So, as to me, they're just stories because I've never seen it.
Africa Live.